Morning, everybody. Anna, Dave, thanks very much for inviting me along to chat. Looking forward to having a talk. Let's see if we can get technology to work. Where are we? Share sound.
This is where the pressure kicks in.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Panic stations rise, and then do I lose all my notes and everything that I need? Right, can you see that? Great. So, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about World Land Trust, who we are as an organisation, what we do, and how I feel that what we do can help you and your businesses, your brands, and etc. that you are, and the work that you're producing as well. So what I'll say from the very beginning is that yes, I work for a conservation organisation, but I'm not going to sit here and lecture anybody. For me, it's about working together, and actually I'm very much on your side. So prior to World Land Trust, I used to work in the print and packaging business, so packaging world, so and design brands. So for my side of things, it's for me is how can this help you guys and what you do within your businesses. So who is World Land Trust? And big start and technology. There we go. So as an organisation, we're incredibly lucky to have some really prominent supporters. So probably the most famous person in the UK, conservation-wise, certainly. So it's David Attenborough. So what he said is the money that's given to World Land Trust, in my estimation, has more effect on the wild world than almost anything you can think of. So for us, that's a really big statement and a really big thing for someone to say about what we do as an organisation. So, but alongside him, we have Steve Backshall, Chris Packham, and anybody out there who's interested in cricket as well. So we have David Gower, who was our first patron as well. But also, we're supported by a lot of other well-known kind of conservationists, who high profile in the UK, who support the work we do and the activities that we carry out. So, as an organisation, what have we done? So, we as an organisation build all of our projects around local partners. So, local partners being that most important element of any project. So we believe that working with local people does many things, but the main ones being is that they fully understand all the intricacies of those landscapes and all the problems that those areas may face. The other good thing about it is they know everything about that landscape and know what will and what won't work. So, but the other thing around it is it's like anywhere in the world. If you provide opportunity for anybody, then they'll buy into it, and that's the most important part. So what we believe in supporting those organisations opposed to putting our own people into those NGOs. So and how we do that with we also, it's not just about funds, it's also about sharing knowledge as well. So I've spoken with the partners and met many of the partners to talk about things like websites and social media and fundraising and all of those kind of things about how they can build sustainability for those projects. Because what we want to do is we want to build a sustainable future, or work with them to build a sustainable future. So, but we try not to be the sole funders of them as well. So what we've got 32 partners in 25 countries, and we have funded 82 reserves. That's going to change this year because we have some new partners coming on board in some new landscapes, which is incredibly exciting. And then in the time scale of World Land Trust, so World Land Trust has been going since 1989. We've now protected over 2 million acres of land, which is an incredible amount. So if you think an acre, roughly the size of a football pitch, or slightly larger than that. So it's a considerable area of landscape that's been protected. And I talk about land because we as an organisation believe that land is the most important part of any project. So we could talk about the species, and we do talk about these species and the importance of those species, and I will do that going through this presentation. But ultimately, land is the most important part because it protects everything in that landscape. So instead of us saying as an organisation, we're going to save an orangutan and a family of orangutans, we could do that, but where are they going to live? So for us, it's about protecting that landscape because it protects everything in it, whether it's the large, small, micro species, where it's plants, trees, but also protecting land has a positive impact on climate because you protect standing forest. Those trees are already providing biodiversity. We're home for biodiversity in that landscape. It's already storing carbon and absorbing carbon. So if you protect the land, you protect everything, and it has this positive impact on basically the climate and biodiversity crisis that we're facing. If you're going to protect that amount of land, we also want to help our partners with the people who have to protect it. So we also fund rangers in these landscapes as well. So these are the guys who are on the ground. These are the guys who are on the front line of conservation. They're doing the monitoring, they're doing the protection, and they are protecting those landscapes. We also do tree planting. So, you know, we've planted over 2 million trees now as well. Our primary focus is protecting what's standing, and, you know, I'm going to come onto that in a moment, but the key thing is protect what's there and then add to that as well, if you can. And what we've done is we estimated across all of these things, because everybody talks about carbon, is around about, we believe that we absorb around 3.9 megatons of carbon per year, but that's an estimate across our projects. But to show that these work, I'm going to show you a quick video, and this was from Belize. And what it does, there's a green line on it, and I will talk over it because I've taken the sound off, because when the video was put together, we went with some stereotypes and there was some panpipe music played over the top of it, which kind of fell into the stereotype of conservation organizations. So, but I will talk over this video if it starts. Here we go. So this was the very first project of World Land Trust. So this was in Belize, Central America, and, you know, this land was on the verge of being just felled for agriculture. So this is what it should look like. So it should look like primary forest. And what we've done is we created this huge reserve called the Rio Bravo Reserve. And this is the top part of it, it's this green line. And what you'll see is the date changing. And what you'll see around the edge is these brown areas appearing. And this is deforestation. So this is area being cleared for agriculture. But what you'll notice is it starts to speed up. So land gets cleared at a much quicker rate. But what you'll also notice is it matches the outline of that reserve completely. So it demonstrates that this reserve, and this is being managed in the right way, is working. And I found it quite amazing because, you know, even that kind of pointy area at the top, it follows that exactly. And everything's in nice, straight, neat lines. Now, I've been there and I've seen it firsthand. It wasn't until I went that I really saw the impact of it. So you're going to see a bulldozer. This is bulldozing a hill in the middle, like this one here, flattening it so it's easier to farm that land. Yeah, so they're just clearing this land. Now, it's agriculture. That is the edge of the reserve. That's how clear it is. You step over a line into the reserve. And then see that little area on the left? That's the entrance to the reserve. So you can see you're going from flat land straight into a wall of green. And for me to see that firsthand was just incredible, because I heard about it, seen the odd photo, but until you see it firsthand, you don't really see the impact. And I promise that this is all going to get a bit more positive and a bit more upbeat as we go along. So, this place is absolutely rich with biodiversity as well. So this landscape, I went there 100 yards from the cabin I was staying in. There was jaguar footprints. There was howler monkeys calling. And if you ever heard a howler monkey at night, it's actually really quite terrifying. I woke up bolt upright wondering what the heck was going on. So, but an incredible landscape. And I always tell the story about, you know, I am a birder. I open my hands up. I am a bird watcher. It's nothing like train spotting before anybody says it. Not there's anything wrong with train spotting either, but it's different. And I saw in the UK in 24 hours 130 species of bird. In Belize, I saw 79 species in an hour. So this is how rich this landscape is. But just on the subject of tree planting, I don't know if anybody's seen this report. It came out last week, where scientists, you know, it was put into the papers that scientists kind of question the validity of tree planting. Nobody's questioning the validity of tree planting, but what they're saying is that there's 10 golden rules of tree planting. This was carried out by the Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew. There's 10 rules of tree planting. First rule, it's a bit like Fight Club, protect existing forests first, which is exactly what we're doing. This is what our mantra has been. But put local people at the heart of tree planting projects. But with all of these tree planting projects, and there's lots of kind of been talk, and there's been lots of talk that was happening during the election around tree planting and the number of trees they're planting. But ultimately, what we're saying is protect forests first, plant trees. And what Cure are also saying is, if you're going to plant trees, make sure they're the right type of trees in the right landscapes. You know, and if you want to plant trees, you've got to own that landscape to be able to plant those trees as well. So for us, we want to do all of those things, but for us, it's protect what's there first. You know, so, and I think this is a really important message, but I also just want to be really clear that we're not criticizing that. And just to example, there's an example of what tree planting can do. So this was our project in Brazil. So this is in the Mata Atlantica. So this is the Atlantic forest, which as a forest, we've now lost 93% of. So there's 7% of this forest left. It's home to incredible wildlife, still finding new species in this area, in this region. And what we've done is we've worked with an organisation who have carried out a large number of tree planting, but also protection of land. And this is what it looked like in 2018. This is what it looks like now. So tree planting does work, but what you'll notice is from that first image, it was about joining patches of forest together. So it's being really strategic in the approach, which is the same across all of our projects, is be strategic and try and achieve as much as you can by joining bits together, extending areas of landscape that are already under protection. So it's not just buying bits of land here, there and everywhere. It's just about being really strategic with those funds. So where are we working? World Land Trust. You know, as you can probably see, hopefully you can see those orange dots. We're working all around the world. So whether it's over in Malaysia and Borneo and the Philippines, and Malaysia and Borneo, you know, you're looking at land, cost of land being, well, the equivalent of the UK basically. And I can assure you the cost of land in the UK at the moment is incredibly expensive, as I've been telling Dave and Anna recently. So, you know, this land is incredibly expensive. So, but we're working in places like India, Africa, Armenia, but what you'll notice is a lot in Central and South America. I mean, some of those places, we can still buy land for around about £100 per acre. So on average, whereas let's say over in the Malaysian Borneo and places like India, you know, you're talking in the thousands of pounds per acre. But the other reason, and I'm always kind of asked, you know, how do we choose these areas and the places to work? But this one here with these green patches, this shows the global biodiversity hotspots. And what you'll notice is that our projects fall into those global biodiversity hotspots. You know, but also the other thing to remember why these are global biodiversity hotspots is a lot of them, the threats are incredibly high as well. So you're looking over at, you know, in Central and South America, obviously we know about the Amazon and places like that, but actually, you know, it's a much, the Amazon does this amazing job as being kind of a flagship for conservation. But there's so many other stories and there's so many other important landscapes that we need to talk about as well. So what are the threats? There's many, and there's many that you've heard about, but up in the top left, this is Paraguay. So this is the Gran Chaco that's being cleared at around about 15,000 hectares per month. So it's around about 45,000 acres being cleared for agriculture, you know, whether it's to grow soya to feed cattle or whether it's for cattle. So, you know, people can have cheap beef burgers and all of those kind of things. So, you know, there's land being cleared. The top right was an interesting story that I was told whilst in Guatemala. So this is rosewood, and the local cocaine producers and dealers actually stopped their business in the narcotics world and decided that illegal extraction of rosewood was actually more fruitful, and they actually earned more money from doing that by sending those logs overseas for the use of furniture and musical instruments. Palm oil, bottom right, you've all heard about the issues of palm oil, but you know, it's one where we've killed the golden goose. You know, it's a product, actually it's a very good product. It actually doesn't need too much space because it's really high yielding. Problem is we just consume way too much of it. So, and that's where the problems have been caused. So areas of land are being cleared for the demands of us wanting shiny hair or spreadable margarine, all of those kind of things. And then bottom left is a mine. So this image kind of made me smile in a perverse way. Beautiful sunset, beautiful forest, and then you realize actually how big that hole is in the ground. So land is being cleared for that. But the biggest thing that when we talk to our partners, what's the biggest fear they have and the biggest concern they have is climate change. And it's something that we're all aware of. Now, this came out on Tuesday. It was a report, the People's Climate Vote, which was organised by the UNDP and in conjunction with Oxford University. And they surveyed and they polled them. And what it came out was, despite the pandemic, almost 2/3 of people around the world now view climate change as a global emergency. So just think about that. So even despite everything that's going on, they still believe there is a global emergency around climate. And then in the UK, 81% agreed with the question, is climate change an emergency requiring urgent response from countries? And the answer, the answers are there, so people are there. So as this kind of goes on, this will hopefully allow you to think about how these things fit in with your businesses, because ultimately there's lots of pressures on business from consumers that are going to kind of drive change in business to answer this question, because people believe it is a concern. Now, to put it in perspective, climate change has many different aspects, and we're going to see incredible changes in our weather systems. We only have to look at some of the level of hurricanes that we're seeing around the world, the changes in our own environment and our own weather systems. But last year, we saw fires. We talked about the Amazon fires, and people have talked about the Amazon fires, and there was a high profile around that in 2019. What people don't realize is the fires were even bigger in 2020, but they weren't spoken about because obviously media was talking about COVID, which is fully understandable. But in that time frame, we had fires in Mexico, we had fires in Guatemala, we had fires, so these pictures are from Mexico, we had fires in Bolivia, Paraguay, Armenia. So this isn't just happening in the Amazon, this is happening around the world. And in Bolivia, at one point, I think one of the fires was around about 30 kilometers wide. That's how wide this fire was. Now, these guys here, some of these are the rangers from our partners in Mexico. They were having to deal with putting out fires whilst trying to deal with COVID and trying to deal with socially distancing from each other. So you can imagine it was quite a complicated one. As you can see, probably the last photo, they were so tired and so shattered by spending out I think it was about 2.5 hour hike to get to the spot, which was on fire, then to put it out because it's on a mountaintop. So it's not like you can kind of carry up or go up there with a big fire engine or anything like that. So they were trying to put this out by hand. Actually, this was kind of quite a stressful period of time for them. But then just moving on, but as a real positive, and just building on that previous slide around the interest from people around the issues and the issues they face. We at World Land Trust had kind of an extraordinary kind of end to the year. And we just saw this kind of realization, I think, from people, but also from businesses, that there is a problem, but also that they wanted to try and do something about it. So we had an appeal for a project in Ecuador. Now, this was the Choco Forest, probably highly unlikely unless people are aware of the Choco Forest. But what we were working with our partner to do, so this is up in Ecuador, is these areas of orange became available for purchase. Now, this is a huge area. So this wasn't something that World Land Trust could do on their own. So there's a group of organizations trying to fund this. But this is an incredibly, incredibly important area of forest in Ecuador. I'm going to show you a quick video. This was the video that was put together for the appeal, so which is now closed. But I think it kind of gives a good summary of why this area is important, but also it demonstrates why we choose some of our projects, based upon some of the information that's in it. So, so our plan was to raise £500,000 between the 1st of October and December, and there was such a landslide of support for it. Actually, we achieved the £500,000 or £500,000 in the first 2 weeks, and actually then the further support enabled us to almost double the amount of income for that project. So by the end of the year, we were actually able to send our partners around about $1 million. So which is just incredible. It showed that people were really beginning to appreciate and value landscapes and the importance of these landscapes. So kind of moving on, so, you know, how does this all fit in? How does this all fit in with you guys, and probably what you guys are probably here to hear about, opposed to listening to me talking about landscapes and threats to landscapes. But ultimately, what we know about climate change is, you know, the Paris commitments that everybody's heard of, that, you know, we need to achieve less than 2 degrees C, you know, really 1.5 degrees. What we know is that if every country who'd signed up to it fulfilled their commitments, the likelihoods of achieving those figures were kind of very, very slim. We have a better chance now that Joe Biden has kind of reversed some of the decisions that were made in the US, and that they're coming back to the Paris commitments, which is fantastic news. But we know it's going to be difficult, and this is where the private sector and businesses have a real opportunity to help drive that change. As we say, what we know is that governments are making those announcements. We know that consumers are now starting to think like this. So actually, and individuals are starting to think like it. So if businesses take on board this as well, they can have a hugely positive impact. So, and how does land kind of fit on what we do? Is basically, land has kind of been undervalued in many ways with regards to this. It's kind of been underestimated in what it can actually achieve. So, but the land use sector could be 50% of the short-term mitigation potential and nearly 40% of the 2030 emissions cap. You know, no other sector can provide those near-term emission reductions. Nothing else. You know, and that green box in the middle kind of sums it up. So landscapes can save more than renewables, energy efficiency, and transport put together. But we put a lot of emphasis on those things, but very little is said about land and landscapes. Yeah, so, you know, this is really important in this fight to climate. You know, and the climate thing is affecting us all. But, you know, why are companies acting? Why should companies act? So what we know is that businesses are under lots of different pressures, especially now at the moment with everything else that's going on with the pandemic. But what we know is there's investor pressure to change. There's regulatory pressures that have been put in. So governments are wanting, you know, large companies to show what reductions they're making, what their carbon emissions are. So there are technology breakthroughs, but one of the biggest ones now has got to be consumer pressure. So consumers want change. Consumers now want things to happen. And we've seen that by lots of statements, and lots of environmental policies have been put in by a lot of the big brands. I'm not going to sit and go through all of this slide, but there's lots of reasons why this could work really well for a business. So we've seen businesses where actually following this process has had a really positive impact, but on their business and on their bottom line. But ultimately, there's other things in here as well. So, you know, we want companies, but they want to be responsible businesses. But one of the things it can do is secure customer loyalty. So increasingly people want their money to matter. They want to know that it's having impact. You know, it can attract talent. So people wanting to work for brands and engaging with those brands. And this is where, you know, we can support that, because actually within this, not only do companies, if they've taken part in carbon balance, and part of the carbon balance scheme is not only are they fulfilling these solutions or these issues and these things that people want, but also it can help their business, but also they can tell stories. So where we slightly differ from other organizations is that actually this is a funding mechanism for conservation. So not only can it tackle the climate crisis, but also tackle the biodiversity crisis as well. So there's all of these stories and all of these impacts. So all the funds that would go through the World Land Trust scheme go back into conservation. And I think that's the most kind of important part of this. Now, how does this fit in? So as I said earlier, I used to work in the branding, and I used to do packaging. I used to do many other things like choose fragrances. I used to go into companies and do trend presentations and all of those kind of things. And all I know that at the time, I was put under a lot of pressure to make big reductions and make reductions in all manner of things. And what this can do, and if I'd known about this, it would have been hugely beneficial. And I'll talk about that a bit more when we go into the next part. The other thing to remember is that millennials, 70% of millennials, this came out as a Nielsen report, are willing to spend more on brands supporting causes they care about. Now, millennials at the time of this report represented about $2.4 trillion of spending power. So there's a lot of money there for brands to be aware of and for brands to kind of chase based upon this. But it was no longer about just, they no longer want brands who are just kind of touching the surface or scraping the surface. They want brands who really do care and are really buying into this cause. The other thing is that 66% of millennials said they would take a pay cut to work for a responsible company. So, you know, I know it's easy for people to say that, and this is a report comes out, and it'd be kind of interesting to see the reality of those things. But it's kind of an interesting point, is that if you're a company and you're a company taking the right action and going about things in the right way, then actually you'll attract the right people as well. And that can only benefit your business in a really positive way as well. So we've got something at the World Land Trust. So there's many different ways to support what we do, whether it's tree planting, buy an acre, supporting rangers, supporting our action fund, but we also have the carbon balance scheme. So this is a place for which enables individuals and organizations to offset their residual greenhouse gas emissions through the protection and restoration of carbon-rich wildlife habitats in the tropics. Now, as I said earlier, this is about us being able to tackle two things: the climate crisis and the biodiversity crisis. And I think it was somebody kind of said the other day, yes, World Land Trust is an NGO, so it's a non-profit organization, but our profit is all in biodiversity. So, so all the funds that we raise go towards offsetting those issues. And as part of the carbon balance scheme, we have the carbon balance paper, print and packaging, which is a simple way for brands and organizations to reduce their carbon impacts of their printed materials. And now, and what I was going to say earlier, and I was kind of getting ahead of myself, is I kind of wish I'd known about this 8 years ago, when I was making all of these reductions in packaging to the point of reducing the paper and the materials in packaging and the weight to the point of actually, was it structurally worth it? I was reducing the weights of paper. I was looking at the processes. And one of the things that I didn't want to do is I didn't want to take it to the point of where these things no longer had any value. Now, when I was being put under pressure by the large mults as to what else we could do to help them hit their environmental statements and their CSR policies, this would have been perfect, because what I could have done is taken the packaging and the print and all of those things I was doing as far as that was sensible, but also I could have then offset the impact of that print as well. So another really positive message that could have been given to our customers or who we were supplying. And I think it would have been really invaluable at the time, and because I was certainly pulling my hair out anyway. And what I would say around the carbon balance paper scheme is that there's many different ways to venture into this. So whether it's the paper supplier, whether it's carbon balance printer, whether it's carbon balance is ultimately, it's a really fantastic scheme. And what I would say is, if there are any questions or further questions about it, and I could go into this and I could go into detail, but if it's something that's of interest to you, your brand is obviously talking to your printer, in this case, which is BB Press. But if there's any further questions, is the guys who manage this for us and look after this for us know the industry inside out. So they know all the details and they know every aspect of it. They are printers, they've got print and paper kind of running through them. They really understand it. So, that last point there is, contact them to try and understand, if it's more you want to understand about it. And I can't emphasize that enough. Yes, I have that background, but these guys really, really understand it. So it's not like you're talking to just someone who is trying to sell it. They also understand the issues that you're all facing. And I'm sure that Dave and Anna will tell you that, having dealt with the team at Carbon Balance Paper. So whether it's Greg, who I think is on this, and Jonathan as well. So so absolutely speak to those guys about it. But the real positive around this scheme is it does carry out positive action again. So with what the Carbon Balance Paper scheme supports is a project, Cây Nặc Trong in Vietnam. So this is in the Annamite lowland forests. And this place, once again, is I really feel completely lucky and honored to have been there. It's an incredible place. But this place is not only an amazing habitat, not only is it doing amazing things for climate, but it's doing amazing things for the wildlife there, the threatened wildlife. And this country in Vietnam is of international conservation importance. This is it harbors around about 10% of the world's species, actually. So it's incredibly important. But also, it's home to one of the fastest growing economies in the world. So it's obviously putting increased pressure on this. But what this project is doing, this Carbon Balance scheme is doing, is helping to protect species like this, which is a red-shanked duke. So, this place is home to many threatened species. I see red-legged species, three species of critically endangered primate, which we're going to kind of talk about. When we talk about critically endangered, just so you kind of understand, critically endangered is basically on next step is extinction. So, these are on the verge of being lost forever. And look, do we want to lose a red-shanked duke? What an incredible looking animal. Just so you know where it is, it's kind of, I don't know if you can see my pointer, but that orange square is halfway down Vietnam, the narrowest point. So this place was bombed to within an inch of its life during the Vietnam War. But this area of forest, which is in blue, survived. This is standing primary forest, and that's what it looks like on the right-hand side. This place is incredible. And then the area in green below is the neighbouring reserve, which we've also carried out some tree planting in there in areas that were affected by Agent Orange, the remnants of the war. So where the only thing that would grow was this kind of really thick grass, which smothered everything. So trees didn't have a chance to regenerate. So I realise I'm kind of I'll kind of rush through a bit of this bit, but ultimately the issues it faces there, these are social. So these guys, if you think actually in the grand scheme of things, the war wasn't that long ago. So actually they're still facing problems. So, but the issues that are facing this area are trapping, logging, the kind of usual suspects, the hunting that goes on in these areas. So what we're doing as part of this project, for it to be a carbon project, it has to have a threat. But also it has to do these other things as well. So what they're doing is employing rangers. And I don't know if you can notice on the guy's left arm where he stood side onto us, he has a big collection of snares that he's collected. What we've seen is a reduction in hunting in this area. But also there's been this big educational program going on with the local communities to kind of enlist their support, but also to, I hate that phrase, educate them, but just also let them know what is happening in the area, why this project is happening. We've also done socio-economic surveys in there to see whether there is the possibility of homestay, so ecotourism. So we're looking at every aspect of it. How do we support these areas to become sustainable? As I touched on, the wildlife is incredible. So 3 endangered primate species. So you've got the red-shanked duke, you've got the white gibbon, you've got the Havin langur, believe it or not, that's the Annamite striped rabbit, found nowhere else. And what we believe is actually only one person has ever actually physically managed to touch one for a part of a survey. Bears, we know that the bears, some bears and things like that, COVID became an issue again because someone somewhere said that the bile from bears was an antidote to the COVID. As we know, that's not the case. And then there's things like the muntjac, large antler muntjac, which are also threatened as well. So, you know, this place is rich. We're also still finding new species. So some people might look at that and go, great. But actually, that's a real demonstration that this place is healthy, and this is a healthy landscape. But ultimately, the main things around this is, look, this project is carbon balance certified. So what we have at World Land Trust is levels of certification. Some are verified, some are not, but some are just verified by World Land Trust. This falls into the latter. We follow the methodologies of the verification, CCBA. So this is a recognized method of working. This landscape also protects 21,000 hectares. So it's a large landscape full of wildlife. This project also annually offsets 41,000 or above, more than 41,000 tons of carbon. And in the life cycle of this project, so in 20 years, we're looking at around about 830,000 tons of carbon being stored and offset in this landscape. Now look, I've kind of talked for quite a long time. I'm going to show you one last video. Hopefully, Anna, I'm not overrunning too much, and Dave, I'm not overrunning too much, but I think you'll find this guy probably a bit more interesting than me. So hopefully the sound will work. All right.
My job, of course, is to make films about the natural world, and as to why people should be interested in the natural world and the beauties of the natural world and the wonders of the natural world. That's my job. But if you are concerned about those things, you have to take notice. What can I do? What can I, as an individual, do? Particularly when I see a threat coming over on the horizon that's going to really threaten the world I love and the world of which I'm a part, and eventually will threaten me. What can I do? It's very important that there should be some things that you can do in the same way as you can vote for a government. Yes, I have a vote. Yes, I can stop using plastic. You can do these things. But in the end, what we're dealing with is a global issue. And so you have to look at where the levers are, the global levers are that will have global effects. And of course, those are political and international. And so we have to work through those. Now, I am under no illusion about how difficult this is. I mean, if you look back at human history is about argument. Human history is about disagreement. Human history is about war. Human history is not overwhelmingly about, all right, let's all be bands of brothers. It is not. And so human beings have got to learn a new way in which they can live together and stop arguing. And that's it. Unless we do that, we're sunk. Seeing a sense is one thing, doing something about it is another. And that's even more difficult, I think. But the sheer democratic force of young people around the world at the moment is forcing middle-aged and aged politicians to take action. And in democratic countries, there is an overwhelming demand by particularly younger people that something must be done. The problem is a moral one. What right do you have to destroy the world and all the creatures that live in it, and also the well-being of your fellow neighbors? If you care about the future of the natural world, you have to care about the preservation and conservation and protection of the communities, biological communities of animals and plants. And it depends fundamentally on whole communities of living organisms, from microorganisms, all the way through plants and all the way through animals. And that if you damage one part of it, you can never tell where the consequences are going to end. And that therefore the sensible attitude to conservation is to conserve animal and plant communities. And that means land. And the World Land Trust recognised that a long time before others did. And as a consequence decided that that was the first objective, followed swiftly by the second recognition that if you were going to put land aside, there was very little land on this planet which human beings, there wasn't a community of human beings they thought belonged to it. And that therefore what the rest of the world should do was to facilitate local people owning their land and having responsibility for their land, which they understood. That was the aim of the World Land Trust, and it was a pioneering aim. Perhaps now it doesn't sound so novel. At the time it was, and the success of the World Land Trust in bringing that about has been phenomenal. The World Land Trust retained its focused aim, which means that it gets it done. It isn't deflected into other things which have their own arguments, but it isn't deflected. It's got that absolutely firmly in focus, and that's why I support the World Land Trust.